The first thing Lyra felt was cold stone beneath her cheek. The second was blood, not enough to kill her, but enough to leave a metallic taste in her mouth when she forced her eyes open and saw the torchlight spinning above her like dying stars. For one terrible heartbeat, she thought the beast had broken free and slaughtered everyone beneath the palace. But the corridor still stood. The guards were alive, though barely. One groaned near the far wall. His silver spear bent in half beside him. Another crawled toward the stairwell, with one hand pressed to his bleeding ribs. The great iron gate had twisted inward, as if some invisible hand had crushed it like wax. Beyond it, the chamber yawned empty. The beast was gone. Lyra pushed herself up on trembling arms. Her ears rang. Her shoulder burned where she had struck the floor. Above her, through layers of stone and ancient mortar, the coronation bells continued to toll. Their deep bronze voices rolled through the castle, solemn and magnificent, calling the nobles of Valdron to witness the crowning of Prince Celric Thorn as king. Lyra had seen him only once, from across the courtyard months ago, when he had returned from the Northern War, wrapped in wolf furs and silence. He had walked past the cheering crowd, without lifting a hand. Tall, dark-haired, broad-shouldered, and cold enough that even his own soldiers had stepped aside before he reached them. The kingdom called him the Wolf Prince. The council called him necessary. The servants called him dangerous when no guards were near. Tonight, he would become Alpha King. If the beast reached the coronation hall before the crown touched his head, the kingdom would drown in blood. Lyra staggered toward the stairs. One of the wounded guards grabbed her ankle. "You," he rasped, his face pale with pain and fury. "You were down here." She froze. His eyes dropped to the empty tray near the gate, then lifted slowly back to her face. Understanding sharpened through his agony. "You fed it." Lyra tried to pull free. "Let go. You fed that thing." His grip tightened. Traitor. The word hit harder than his hand could have. Traitor. The oldest wound in her life. The word whispered whenever nobles saw the scars along her neck. The word carved into the memory of House Everdane, her dead house, though she had been too young to know what her family had done or whether they had done anything at all. Every year, during the Ash Remembrance, children threw black petals into the palace fountain to honor the royal blood spilled by traitors. Every year, servants watched Lyra while they did it. She kicked free and ran. The stairs seemed endless. The air grew warmer as she climbed, rich with candle smoke, roasted meat, crushed roses, and the sharp scent of hundreds of wolves packed into one hall. The closer she came to the upper corridors, the louder the court became. Music, laughter, the rustle of silk, the murmur of noble houses pretending they did not fear each other. Then came the scream. It tore through the palace so violently that Lyra nearly fell forward. The beast had reached the hall. She emerged behind the servant entrance and saw chaos through a narrow archway. The coronation banquet had become a storm of overturned tables, shattered crystal, and fleeing nobles. Silver banners hung from the vaulted ceiling, each embroidered with the crowned wolf of Valdron. Beneath them, the monster stood in the center of the hall, larger than any nightmare, its black body wreathed in smoke, its broken chains dragging across the marble floor. Wolves in human skin backed away from it with their teeth bared and their eyes glowing gold. Royal guards formed a shaking half-circle with silver spears raised, but none dared strike first. At the far end of the hall, before the throne, Prince Celric Thorn stood unmoving. He was dressed for coronation, not battle. A black mantle fell from his shoulders, clasped with a silver wolf's head at his throat. The crown had not yet been placed upon him. It rested on a velvet cushion beside the high priestess, untouched. His face was carved in shadow and candlelight, severe and unreadable, but his eyes pale gray, almost silver, were fixed not on the beast's claws, nor its teeth, nor the blood dripping from its wounded side. He was staring at its chains, as though he recognized them. Lord Varic Thorn, the king's uncle and regent of the royal council, stepped forward from beside the throne. He was older than Kaelric, elegant in a way that felt sharpened rather than graceful, with silver threaded through his dark hair and rings glittering on every finger. His voice cut across the panic. "Kill it." No one moved. Varric's jaw tightened. "I said kill it." The guards advanced. The beast lowered its head. A growl rolled through the hall, deep enough to shake dust from the rafters. Several nobles collapsed to their knees, not from worship, but from the pressure of ancient alpha power pressing against their wolves. Lyra felt it too. It crushed the breath from her chest. Her knees almost buckled, yet beneath the terror, something else stirred inside her. Not fear, grief. The beast sounded hurt. A guard threw the first spear. The silver blade struck the beast's shoulder and sank deep. The creature roared, slamming one claw into the marble. Cracks exploded outward. Nobles screamed. The guards scattered. Another spear flew. Then another. One struck near the old wound Lyra had seen beneath the prison torchlight. Something in her broke. "Stop." Her voice was not loud enough to command a court, but somehow, the beast heard her. Its head snapped toward the servant archway. So did everyone else. Lyra stood exposed in her plain gray dress, hair half fallen from its braid, blood on her lip, scars visible where her collar had torn during the fall. The entire royal court turned upon her with the familiar cruelty of being seen only when she had done something wrong. A whisper moved through the nobles. The scarred maid. What is she doing here? She came from below. Varric's eyes narrowed. Seize her. Two guards grabbed Lyra before she could step back. One twisted her arm behind her spine hard enough to make her gasp. They dragged her into the center of the hall, across spilled wine and broken glass, toward the throne where the uncrowned prince watched in silence. The beast surged forward. Every spear lifted at once. "Hold," Kaelric commanded. The word struck the hall like a blade. The guards froze. Even the beast stopped. Lyra lifted her eyes slowly. The wolf prince was looking at her now, not with pity, not with disgust, with suspicion. That was almost worse. Lord Varric descended the throne steps, his expression grave enough to appear righteous. This servant was found near the creature's prison. She has been feeding it, perhaps weakening the seals, perhaps on orders from those who still worship the fallen bloodlines. Lyra's stomach turned cold. "No," she whispered. Varric did not look at her. He looked at the court, because the court mattered. On the night of coronation, when Valdron is most vulnerable, this girl releases the palace beast into the royal hall. "I didn't release it," Lyra said. Her voice trembled, but she forced it louder. "They were hurting it." A terrible silence followed. Someone laughed softly, not with amusement, with contempt. Varric finally turned his gaze on her. "Hurting it." Lyra swallowed. "It was chained, wounded, starving. It is not a stray dog, girl. It is a curse beneath this kingdom. It feels pain." That sentence moved through the hall like a dangerous spell. Kaelric's eyes sharpened. Varric stepped closer until Lyra could smell the smoke and myrrh on his robes. And how would a kitchen maid know what a monster feels? She had no answer that would save her, because the truth was impossible. She did not know how she knew. She only knew that when the beast roared, something in her chest answered. When its blood fell, her scars burned. When silver pierced its flesh, she felt the echo in her own bones. Varric lifted a hand. "Bring the moon chains." Lyra went still. The moon chains were not ordinary restraints. They were used for criminals with corrupted wolf blood, witches who stole from moon temples, and traitors sentenced to public judgment. They did not simply bind flesh, they revealed hidden magic. Kaelric spoke at last. "Why?" Varric looked back at him. "Because if this girl has no forbidden mark, the chains will prove her innocence." Lyra heard what he did not say. And if she did, she would die before the coronation crown touched Kaelric's head. The prince's expression did not change, but his gaze flicked to Lyra's scars. Just once, briefly, not with revulsion, but recognition of pain. Then, it vanished. "Do it," Varric ordered. The guards dragged her to the center of the hall. The beast snarled, smoke rolling violently from its shoulders. "Stay back," Kelric said, but the command was not directed at Lyra. It was directed at the monster, and the impossible happened. The beast obeyed. Lyra's breath caught. So did Kelric's. For the first time that night, something like uncertainty crossed the prince's face. The guards forced Lyra to her knees. The hall blurred around her. Hundreds of eyes watched hungrily, eager for proof that her suffering had meaning, that her scars had always been a warning, that the loneliness they had given her had been deserved. A priestess placed the moon chains around Lyra's wrists. The silver touched her skin. Pain exploded through her body. Lyra screamed, but beneath her scream, the beast began to howl. And high above the coronation hall, the moon disappeared behind black clouds. The howl did not sound like rage. It sounded like mourning. The entire coronation hall fell into terrified silence as the beast's roar rolled through the palace towers and out across the kingdom beyond the walls of Valdron. Somewhere in the distant city below, wolves answered instinctively. Their cries rose through the storm-dark night one after another, until the kingdom itself seemed to tremble beneath the sound. Lyra collapsed forward against the marble floor. The moon chains burned white around her wrists. Smoke curled from beneath her skin. The pain was unbearable, not sharp, but ancient, as though invisible claws were tearing through old wounds hidden deep inside her body. Her scars blazed with heat beneath her collarbone. She tried to breathe and nearly choked instead. Around her, nobles recoiled in horror. "She's marked." "No, impossibly. That's moonfire." The priestess holding the chains stumbled backward, her face drained of blood. "There's power inside her." Varric's expression darkened instantly. "Of course there is." But Kelric had not moved. The wolf prince stood at the foot of the throne steps, staring at Lyra with an intensity that made her chest tighten despite the agony tearing through her veins. Most men looked at her scars first. Kelric looked at the chains, at the way they glowed, at the way the silver seemed unable to settle against her skin. The beast slammed itself against the guards again. Spears shattered. One soldier flew across the hall hard enough to crack a pillar. Panic erupted among the court as nobles rushed backward in a wave of silk and terror. Candlelight flickered violently while black smoke spread across the marble floor like living shadows. "Kill it," someone screamed, but no one moved close enough to try. The beast's silver eyes remained fixed on Lyra. Not the court, not the throne. Here, Varric saw it too, and Lyra realized something horrifying in that moment. The royal uncle was not surprised. Fear twisted through her chest, colder than the chains themselves. He had expected this. Somehow, he already knew there was a connection between her and the creature beneath the palace, which meant this was never about justice. It was a trap. Varric descended the throne steps slowly, careful to remain behind the line of guards. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting." Lyra forced herself upright despite the pain. "I didn't do anything." "No?" Varric's voice remained smooth. "Then perhaps you should explain why the beast obeys you." "I never commanded it, but it listens." The accusation spread through the court instantly. Whispers sharpened. Forbidden magic, beast taming, blood corruption. The old fears of Valdron. Lyra's pulse hammered painfully. "I don't know what it is." The beast growled low in its throat. Varric smiled faintly. "Liar." Before she could answer, the priestess suddenly gasped. Everyone turned. The silver chains around Lyra's wrists were changing. Ancient symbols burned slowly across the metal links, glowing one by one like waking embers. Not punishment runes, recognition runes. The priestess stepped backward in visible terror. "That seal," she whispered. "It shouldn't exist anymore." Kelric's gaze sharpened instantly. "What seal?" The woman hesitated. Varric's voice cut through the silence. "Answer your king." "Not king yet," Lyra thought suddenly. The crown still waited untouched beside the throne. The priestess swallowed hard. Those runes belonged to the old bloodlines before the Ash Rebellion, before House Everdane fell. Every eye in the hall turned toward Lyra. Her blood went cold. House Everdane. No one spoke that name openly anymore. Not unless they wanted silence afterward. Lyra barely remembered her family. Fragments only. A woman singing softly beside candlelight. A warm hand brushing her hair. Smoke. Fire. Screaming. Then years of emptiness inside palace servant quarters where no one said her surname aloud. The kingdom taught its children that House Everdane betrayed the crown generations ago using forbidden moon magic and shadow creatures born from corrupted wolves. Their bloodline had supposedly perished in the flames that destroyed their estate. Supposedly. Varric's expression became carefully solemn. The servant's true identity appears to have revealed itself. No, Lyra whispered instantly, but the court had already decided. Traitor's blood. The words moved through the hall like poison. The beast roared again. This time, Lyra felt the sound inside her ribs. Not through fear, through recognition. Pain exploded suddenly across her scars. She cried out as silver light flashed beneath her skin, illuminating the ruined marks climbing from her collarbone toward her throat. The entire hall recoiled in shock. Ancient symbols were appearing beneath the scars. Runes. Alive. The moon chains. Shattered. Every candle in the hall extinguished at once. Darkness swallowed the court. Screams erupted. Then, silver fire ignited across Lyra's skin. The light burst outward violently enough to throw nearby guards backward. Wind roared through the throne hall, though every window remained sealed. Royal banners snapped overhead, while black smoke twisted around the beast like living wings. And in the center of it all, Lyra stood frozen in terror. She had never seen magic before. Not real magic. Not like this. The symbols beneath her skin glowed brighter with every heartbeat, spreading across her arms in beautiful, terrible patterns that looked almost alive. The air itself bent strangely around her. The marble beneath her feet cracked. Then the beast lowered itself. Slowly, deliberately, before the entire royal court. It bowed. The hall went silent. Not one noble breathed. The monster beneath the palace, the creature that had slaughtered soldiers, shattered enchanted chains, and terrified the kingdom for 20 years, bowed its massive head before a scarred servant girl. Lyra stared at it in horror. No, she whispered shakily. But the beast remained kneeling. And somehow, impossibly, she understood the meaning behind its eyes. Not submission, recognition. A memory stirred violently inside her mind. A throne buried beneath black snow. A hand touching dark fur. A voice saying, "You were never meant to wear chains." The vision vanished instantly. Lyra staggered backward, gasping. Kaelric moved before anyone else did. The prince crossed the hall in 3 strides and caught her arm before she fell. The moment his hand touched her skin, silver fire exploded between them. Both of them froze. A mark burned across Kaelric's wrist beneath his sleeve. Faint, hidden, but unmistakable. Matebund. Shock flickered across his face for the first time all night. Lyra felt it too. A violent pull deep in her chest. Varm. Dangerous. Alive. The connection vanished almost instantly as Kaelric released her arm sharply, as though touching her had burned him. His expression closed off at once, colder than before, but Lyra caught at that single fractured second of fear in his silver eyes. He knew what had almost happened. So did Varric, and judging by the fury now darkening the royal uncle's face, this was the last thing he wanted. The court erupted into chaos. She bewitched him. The beast recognizes her. She carries Everdane blood. Kill her before the curse spreads. Guards lifted silver spears again, but this time many looked uncertain, afraid. Some stared at the kneeling beast instead of Lyra. Others stared at Kaelric, waiting. The prince's jaw tightened visibly. He was trapped. If he defended her publicly, the council would accuse him of corruption before he even took the crown. If he condemned her, he would be sentencing a terrified servant girl to death while a monster knelt at her feet. Varric stepped forward smoothly. "Your Highness," he said carefully. "The kingdom watches. A warning, not a reminder." Kaelric's gaze never left Lyra. She saw the conflict there now beneath the coldness. Calculation, suspicion, something darker she could not name. And underneath it all, recognition. Not of her, of the magic. The beast suddenly rose again. The hall panicked instantly, but instead of attacking, the creature stepped toward Lyra slowly, until its massive body stood beside her like a wall of shadow and smoke. The silver runes still glowing across her skin reflected faintly in its eyes. Then the impossible happened again. The beast pressed its enormous head gently against Lyra's shoulder. Not violence. Protection. The entire court stared in stunned silence. Varric's mask finally cracked. For the first time that night, Lyra saw genuine fear in the royal uncle's eyes. And somewhere deep beneath the palace stones, something ancient began waking up. The sound came from beneath the castle. Notaruar. Not an earthquake. A heartbeat. Deep, slow, ancient. The marble floor beneath the coronation hall pulsed once beneath everyone's feet, and every wolf in the chamber reacted instantly. Nobles stiffened. Guards inhaled sharply. Several servants collapsed outright, as invisible pressure rolled through the air like the breath of something buried far below the kingdom. The beast beside Lyra lifted its head abruptly. Its silver eyes narrowed toward the floor. Kaelric heard it too. She saw the exact moment his expression changed, not into fear, but recognition. He knew that sound. Varric recovered first. "Seal the hall," he ordered immediately. No one leaves. Heavy iron doors slammed shut around the throne chamber. Enchanted locks ignited blue along the stone archways. The nobles began shouting all at once, panic rising beneath their polished composure. "You cannot trap us in here. That creature, the girl, carries forbidden blood." Lyra barely heard them. The heartbeat beneath the palace echoed inside her skull now. Every pulse sent strange flashes through her mind. Snow falling over black stone towers. Wolves screaming beneath a blood-red moon. A throne wrapped in chains. And eyes. Silver eyes. Not the beast's. Uman. Watching her. She stumbled backward. Kaelric noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" His voice was low enough that only she heard it. The question stunned her almost as much as the concern hidden beneath it. No one asked if she was hurt. Not ever. Lyra struggled to steady her breathing. "Something's under the castle." The prince's expression darkened slightly. "You can feel it. Not a question." The beast growled softly beside her. Varric descended the throne steps again before Kaelric could answer. "Enough." His voice rang sharply through the hall. "This spectacle ends now." He pointed directly at Lyra. "Take the girl to the lower sanctum." The room froze. Even the priestesses looked alarmed. Lyra's stomach turned cold. The lower sanctum was older than the palace itself. A place of judgment beneath the moon temple, where corrupted wolves were executed before the royal bloodline existed. Servants whispered that no one returned from it unchanged. Kaelric's jaw hardened. "No." The word cut through the hall instantly. Every noble turned toward him. Varric's eyes narrowed almost invisibly. "Your Highness, she hasn't been judged guilty. The beast bowed to her in the center of your coronation, and yet no one here understands why." Varric stepped closer, lowering his voice carefully. "The kingdom doesn't need understanding tonight. It needs certainty, political survival." Lyra heard it, hidden beneath every syllable. The nobles were terrified. The coronation was collapsing, and Varric needed someone to blame before fear turned toward the throne itself, toward Kaelric. The prince knew it too. That was the worst part. He was not choosing between right and wrong. He was choosing between her life and his crown. The beast shifted protectively closer to Lyra, shadow smoke curling across the cracked marble floor. Guards recoiled instinctively. Then one noblewoman stepped forward from the crowd. Lady Selen Veyer. Lyra recognized her instantly. Everyone in the palace did. Beautiful. In the sharp, dangerous way of winter ice, Selene wore silver silk embroidered with moonflowers. The colors of House Veyer, the most powerful allied bloodline in Valdron. Rumors had followed her for months. Future queen, future Luna, future mate to Caelric Thorn, and judging from the fury behind her elegant smile, she already believed the throne belonged to her. How touching, Selene said softly, her gaze fixed on Lyra. The prince suddenly defends a servant accused of blood corruption. Caelric did not look at her. Choose your next words carefully. But Selene only smiled wider. The court deserves honesty, does it not? She turned gracefully toward the gathered nobles. Or shall we pretend we didn't all see what happened moments ago? The whispers intensified instantly. Matebund, forbidden blood. The prince touched her. Lyra felt sick. Selene approached slowly until only a few feet separated them. Her eyes traveled across Lyra's scars with carefully measured disgust. I remember you, she said quietly. The burned little maid from the East Wing. Lyra said nothing. Selene tilted her head. You used to hide whenever nobles entered the kitchens, because servants learned quickly that invisible people survived longer. But now, Selene continued softly, you stand beside monsters. The insult hit harder because it was meant to sound gentle. The beast snarled low in its throat. Selene's gaze flicked briefly toward it, and for one split second, Lyra saw fear. Real fear. Interesting. Lady Selene was not frightened of Lyra. She was frightened of what the beast recognized. Varric raised his hand impatiently. Enough delays. Take the girl below, before this spreads further. Guards approached cautiously. The beast immediately bared its teeth. Black smoke exploded outward. Several men stumbled backward in terror. Caelric stepped between them instantly. The hall went silent again. Not because of the beast, because the prince had placed himself directly between the guards and Lyra. A political disaster. Selene stared at him in disbelief. Caelric. His eyes remained fixed on the beast. No silver weapons. The creature slaughtered royal guards. It responds to aggression. Varric's expression hardened. You speak as though you understand it. A dangerous question. Too dangerous. For the first time all night, uncertainty flickered through Caelric's composure. Only briefly. But Lyra saw it, and suddenly she understood something terrifying. The prince knew more about the beast than anyone realized. Before anyone could speak again, another pulse thundered beneath the castle. This time the floor cracked. A jagged line split through the center of the coronation hall, with a deafening roar of breaking marble. Nobles screamed as the ground shook violently beneath them. Chandeliers swayed overhead. Dust rained from the ceiling, and from the darkness below the crack, silver light emerged. Ancient runes ignited beneath the palace floor, the same symbols burning beneath Lyra's skin. The beast jerked backward violently, as if struck by invisible force. A terrible sound ripped from its throat, not rage. Bain. Lyra moved without thinking. She reached for it. The moment her hand touched its fur, the visions returned. Not fragments this time. Memories. A frozen battlefield beneath black skies. Thousands of wolves kneeling before a king wrapped in shadow. A younger version of the beast, not monstrous then, but human standing beside a throne carved from obsidian stone. His face was clearer now. Dark hair, silver eyes. Beautiful and terrible. And beside him, here, note Lyra, someone else wearing her face. A queen draped in moonfire, her hand resting against the king's chest as she whispered, "If they betray you, burn the throne before you kneel to it." The vision shattered. Lyra gasped, violently, and stumbled backward. The beast caught her. Before she hit the floor, the entire court stared, because for one impossible second, the creature's claws had become human hands. Then the illusion vanished, but not before Caelric saw it, not before Varric saw it, Prestus. And definitely not before the priestess screamed, the Shadow King. Silence crashed over the hall. Every noble turned pale. Some immediately dropped to one knee. Others backed away as though the words themselves carried death. Lyra's pulse thundered painfully. She did not know that name, but the court did. Varric's face lost all remaining color. Celine whispered. Impossible. Calric slowly turned toward the beast. Not with fear, with horror. The prince's voice came low and strained. You're supposed to be dead. The beast looked at him, and for the first time, it spoke. Not yet. The word echoed through the throne hall, like a curse, awakening from centuries of silence. Not yet. The beast's voice was deep and ruined, barely human beneath the growl of something monstrous, but unmistakably real. Every noble in the coronation chamber recoiled in horror. One council lord crossed himself with trembling fingers. Another whispered an old prayer against dead kings rising from beneath the earth. Lyra stood frozen. The creature's massive body still shielded her from the guards, black smoke curling from its fur like living shadow. But now she could no longer look at it without seeing the man inside the visions. The king beneath the monster. The silver-eyed ruler, wrapped in darkness. The Shadow King. Calric descended the throne steps slowly, his expression colder than winter steel, though Lyra saw the shock buried beneath it. Who are you? He demanded. The beast's eyes never left him. You already know. A pulse of tension swept through the room. Varric moved immediately. Enough of this madness. His voice cracked sharper now, stripped of its earlier composure. Kill it. Kill them both before the curse spreads further. No one obeyed, because the ground beneath the palace was still glowing. The crack splitting the coronation hall widened slowly across the marble floor, while ancient silver runes burned beneath it like veins of moonlight trapped under stone. Wolves throughout the chamber whimpered uneasily. Several nobles had already shifted partially without meaning to, claws emerging from trembling hands. Something old was waking beneath Valdron, and everyone felt it. Celine stepped toward Calric carefully. You cannot hesitate now, she whispered urgently. The court is watching. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Lyra. Hatred burned there now beneath the elegance. Not simple jealousy. Fear of replacement. Fear of losing power. The people already whisper that your bloodline weakens. Celine continued softly enough for only nearby nobles to hear. If you protect her after this. She did not finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Calric's claim to the throne depended on control, strength, stability. If the kingdom believed he had been corrupted by forbidden magic before the crown even touched his head, rival pacts would tear Valdron apart within months. The prince knew it, and still, he did not order Lyra's execution. Varric noticed. The royal uncle's expression darkened with calculation. Your Highness, he said carefully, the throne cannot survive uncertainty. Calric finally looked at him. And yet uncertainty seems to terrify you more than anyone else in this room. The accusation landed hard. Several nobles exchanged glances instantly. Varric smiled faintly. You question my loyalty? I question your timing. Silence. Lyra's pulse quickened. The prince was beginning to see it. Whatever trap Varric planned tonight had started long before the beast escaped its prison. The regent's voice remained calm. I protected this kingdom while you fought wars in the north, and chained something beneath the palace for 20 years. A dangerous stillness spread through the hall. The beast watched both men silently. Then its gaze shifted toward Lyra again. The pressure inside her chest returned instantly. Not pain, memory. The glowing runes beneath the floor pulsed once more, and suddenly another vision tore through her mind. A throne room, drowned in blood. The Shadow King kneeling beside a dying woman. Silver chains piercing his flesh. Voices shouting betrayal. Vaidic, younger then, but unmistakable, standing beside armed nobles, while moon priests dragged the king toward darkness. You were never fit to rule, Varric said in the vision. The Shadow King tried to rise, then looked toward the dying queen beside the throne, toward Lyra. No, Newt. Lyra, the woman with her face. Run, the king whispered desperately. Then silver spears pierced his back. The vision shattered violently. Lyra cried out and stumbled backward into Calric. His hands caught her shoulders automatically. The mate bond flared instantly. Silver light flashed beneath both their skin. The hall gasped. Kael'ric released her at once, jaw tightening hard enough to cut stone. But it was too late. Everyone saw it. Celine's face drained of color. Varric went utterly still. The beast growled softly. Mata bunt. Not complete. Not accepted. But there, the prince stared at Lyra with something dangerously close to fear, because wolves could not fake the bond. And if the future king of Valdron carried even the beginning of a bond to a servant girl tied to forbidden bloodlines and ancient monsters, the throne itself was in danger. Celine recovered first. She bewitched him. The accusation sliced through the hall instantly. Several nobles nodded eagerly. Of course, that explanation was easier. Suffer. Lyra stepped backward. I didn't. She carries Everdane blood, Celine snapped. The old bloodlines were known for shadow, binding, and mind corruption. That's enough, Kael'ric said sharply. But Celine was no longer speaking only to him. She was speaking to the court, to the nobles who still remember the Ash Rebellion, she continued, to the families whose children burned because the Shadow King refused to surrender forbidden magic. The hall stirred uneasily. Lyra looked toward the beast instinctively. Its silver eyes remained fixed on Celine now. Cold, ancien, murderous. And suddenly, Lyra understood something else. The beast did not hate everyone in this room equally. It hated specific bloodlines, specific people. Varric stepped forward again before the tension could break apart completely. The solution is simple, he declared. The servant and the creature will be sealed inside the lower sanctum until the council determines the full extent of the corruption. No, Lyra whispered instantly. The words slipped out before she could stop it, because something deep inside her knew exactly what waited below the palace. Death, not judgment. Execution. The beast snarled beside her. Kael'ric's gaze flicked toward Lyra sharply. You know something about the sanctum. She hesitated. That alone was answer enough. Varric moved immediately. Seize them. This time, the guards obeyed. Silver chains flew through the air. The beast roared. Chaos exploded across the hall. One guard slammed into a pillar as shadow smoke tore through the chamber. Nobles screamed and scattered while black claws ripped through marble. The ancient runes beneath the floor flared blinding white, and then the crown beside the throne ignited. Everyone froze. The royal crown of Valdron rose slowly into the air. Silver fire spiraled around it. The priestesses collapsed to their knees in terror. That's impossible. The crown hovered above the cracked marble floor for one breathless moment. Then it turned, not toward Kael'ric, toward Lyra. The hall erupted in panic. No, she's cursed. The crown recognizes blood. Varric's face twisted with naked horror. The crown drifted closer to Lyra slowly, glowing brighter with every second. Ancient wolf carvings along its silver edges burned with moonlight. The closer it came, the hotter the runes beneath Lyra's skin became, until she could barely breathe. The beast lowered its head again, not to the crown, to her. Every wolf in the room felt it instantly. The shift in power, the old magic awakening, the kingdom's forgotten bloodline returning. Kael'ric stepped between Lyra and the advancing guards. Not subtle anymore. Not careful. A public choice. Celine stared at him in disbelief. You would risk the throne for her? The prince's silver eyes never left Lyra. No, he said quietly. Then his gaze shifted toward Varric. I think the throne was already stolen long before tonight. The hall fell silent. Varric's mask finally shattered. Kill them all. The first soldier lunged toward Lyra with a silver blade. He never reached her. The beast tore through the guards like a storm given flesh, shadow exploding across the throne hall in violent waves. Marble shattered beneath enormous claws. Spears snapped like brittle branches. Nobles screamed and scattered behind overturned banquet tables, while the royal banners above whipped wildly in unnatural wind. And in the center of the chaos, the crown still floated before Lyra. Silver fire illuminated her scarred face, as though the ancient relic itself had awakened for her alone. Varric backed away from the throne, fury and panic battling openly across his features now. Take the crown, he shouted at the priestesses. "Do not let her touch it." But none of the women moved. The oldest among them stared at Lyra with tears running silently down her face. "She has the mark," the priestess whispered. "The queen's mark." Lyra barely heard her. The pressure inside her chest had become unbearable. Visions crashed through her mind faster now. A woman draped in moonfire standing beside the Shadow King beneath black winter skies. Silver wolves bowing across frozen battlefields. A child crying while flames consumed a palace tower. And one final image that made Lyra's blood run cold. A man kneeling before her mother, Vierik, younger, smiling, holding a dagger behind his back. The vision vanished. Lyra gasped violently. Traitor. Not House Everdane. Him. The realization hit so hard she nearly collapsed. The rebellion had been a lie, or at least not the truth the kingdom had been told. Lyra. Caelric's voice cut through the chaos, just as another guard rushed toward her from behind. The prince intercepted him instantly, driving the man backward with brutal force before turning sharply toward her again. For the first time that night, Lyra saw the wolf beneath his control. Not physically, emotionally. His restraint was breaking. Silver light flickered faintly in his eyes as he moved between her and the hall, like instinct, had already decided she belonged under his protection, which terrified him. She could see it. The mate bond was growing stronger, and every second he defended her publicly, the kingdom watched its future king drift closer to forbidden blood. The beast roared again. A dozen guards flew backward. Black smoke climbed the throne pillars like living shadows, while the crack splitting the floor widened further across the hall. Something beneath the palace answered the beast now. Ancient runes ignited beneath the marble one after another, pulsing like a heartbeat. The castle itself was waking. Celine stumbled backward near the throne, her composure finally fracturing. "Caelric," she shouted over the chaos, "if you don't stop this now, the council will never accept your coronation." The prince looked at her coldly. Then perhaps the council should explain why they chained a king beneath this palace for 20 years. The hall went dead silent. Even the fighting faltered. Celine's face paled instantly. Varric snarled. "You know nothing." "No," Caelric said quietly. "But I know fear when I see it." The prince turned slowly toward the beast, toward the silver eyes hidden inside shadow. "Who are you?" The creature stared back at him for a long moment. Then the darkness around its body shifted. The smoke peeled away slowly from one side of its face. Human skin emerged beneath black fur. Scarred, broken, but unmistakably royal. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The resemblance struck everyone at once. The same silver eyes, the same sharp jaw, the same blood. The beast spoke again, its voice rough with years of silence. "I am your father." The world stopped. Lyra felt Caelric go utterly still beside her. Not shock alone, devastation. The former Alpha King of Valdron, King Aeron Thorn, had supposedly died during the Ash Rebellion 20 years ago. Every history scroll in the kingdom claimed he sacrificed himself to stop House Everdane and their forbidden magic from consuming the throne. But the creature beneath the palace, the monster chained in darkness, had been the king all along. "No," Celine whispered. Several nobles immediately dropped to their knees. Others backed away in horror from Varric. The regent's expression hardened into something uglier than fear. "Hatred. It should have stayed buried," he said coldly. Aeron's monstrous gaze locked onto him instantly. "Brother." The word dripped with centuries of rage. Caelric looked between them slowly. Understanding dawned piece by piece across his face. Not just betrayal. Inheritance. The kingdom he was about to rule had been built on lies. Varric raised his hand sharply. Archers emerged from the upper balconies. Silver arrows aimed directly at Lyra, not Aeron. Here. The realization hit Caelric instantly. "Move!" "Tulat." The arrows flew. The beast lunged. Caelric grabbed Lyra and threw her sideways as silver bolts tore through the air. One arrow pierced Aeron's shoulder. Another struck Kael'ric across the ribs. Blood splattered across the marble floor. Lyra screamed. The prince collapsed to one knee. The entire hall erupted again. Aeron roared so violently the chandeliers shattered overhead. Darkness exploded outward from his body. Real darkness. Not smoke. Magic. The shadow swallowed half the throne hall instantly, consuming torchlight and moonlight alike. Nobles fled blindly through screaming crowds while guards dropped their weapons in terror. And at the center of it all, Lyra saw Varric smile. Not afraid. Prepared. He wanted this. The chaos. The fear. The monster revealed before the court. Because now the kingdom would demand destruction, not truth. Varric stepped backward toward the throne as hidden soldiers emerged around him wearing black wolf armor beneath their cloaks. Not royal guards. Private loyalists. He had planned for rebellion tonight. Maybe even hoped for it. "You see now," Varric shouted across the chaos. "This is what Everdane created. This is the curse they unleashed upon Valdron." "That's a lie," Lyra cried. Her voice surprised even herself. The hall turned toward her. Varric smiled coldly. "Then tell them the truth, servant." She froze, because she didn't fully know it. Only fragments. Memories that were not hers. Aeron staggered under the silver arrows lodged in his flesh. The dark magic around him flickered violently. Kael'ric tried to rise despite blood pouring down his side. And suddenly Lyra understood something terrible. Varric did not fear Aeron alone. He feared her memories returning, because she carried something more dangerous than magic. The truth. The runes beneath her skin flared brighter. The floating crown pulsed once above her head. Then the ancient doors beneath the throne hall exploded open. A freezing wind tore upward from the depths below the palace. And from the darkness beneath Valdron, wolves began to howl. The howls did not belong to living wolves. Every person in the throne hall felt it instantly. Death, ancient and cold. The sound rose from beneath the palace stones, like ghosts clawing their way out of forgotten graves. Frost spread across the cracked marble floor in twisting silver veins. Candle flames turned blue. The air itself grew heavy with old magic, powerful enough to suffocate weaker wolves where they stood. The nobles panicked completely. Some fled toward the sealed doors only to find the enchanted locks refusing to open. Others dropped to their knees, praying desperately to the moon goddess. Several younger wolves collapsed unconscious as the pressure intensified. Lyra could barely breathe. The runes beneath her skin burned brighter, with every howl echoing from the depths below. And somewhere beneath the terror, something inside her was awakening. Not rage. Not hunger. Authority. The floating crown hovered inches from her now, silver fire reflecting across her scars. She stared at it helplessly, while fragmented memories continued slamming through her mind. Aeron standing beside her beneath black snowfall. A throne room wrapped in moonlight, his voice whispering against her forehead. "If I fall, they must never find you." Then blood. Screaming. Silver chains. Fire consuming the palace. Lyra gasped violently. "No. Not Lyra. Here." The woman from the visions. The queen. The realization shook her to the core. These were not random memories. They belonged to someone else. Someone whose soul still lingered inside her blood. The forgotten queen of House Everdane. Aeron staggered near the shattered banquet tables, black smoke pouring from his wounds where the silver arrows remained embedded. His monstrous form flickered violently now between beast and man. Claws became fingers for brief moments before twisting back again. The curse was destabilizing. Kael'ric noticed it too. Despite the blood soaking his side, the prince forced himself upright with visible effort. "The silver arrows," he said hoarsely. "They're weakening the seal." Varric smiled from the throne steps. Exactly. The royal uncle no longer bothered pretending innocence. His black-armored soldiers spread across the hall while terrified nobles watched in confusion and horror. Some recognized the crest hidden beneath the armor, now a silver serpent wrapped around a crown. Varric's personal guard, not the kingdom's. Selene stared at him in disbelief. "You planned this?" Varric looked almost amused. Of course. Aeron growled low in his throat. You murdered your king. You say with Valdron. The words rang through the hall sharply. Varric descended the throne steps slowly, no longer hiding the hatred in his eyes. You were destroying the kingdom long before I chained you beneath it. Aeron's silver eyes darkened murderously. You feared me. I feared what you became. The former king laughed. Then a terrible sound twisted by pain and shadow magic. You feared losing power. Varric's expression hardened instantly. There are no good kings, he snapped. Only strong ones. The hall fell silent, because many nobles agreed. Lyra saw it in their faces. Fear, doubt, calculation. The kingdom had survived under Varric's rule for 20 years, while Aeron remained buried beneath the palace as a monster. For some, the truth no longer mattered. Only survival. Varric turned slowly toward Caelric. You understand that now, don't you? The prince said nothing. Blood dripped steadily from his side onto the marble floor, while silver light flickered faintly beneath his skin where the mate bond still burned unstable and unfinished. His gaze remained fixed on Aeron, on his father, a father he had mourned his entire life, a father the kingdom taught him to worship as a martyr. Caelric's voice finally came low and dangerous. You chained him alive. Varric met his gaze evenly. He slaughtered his own court, after Everdane poisoned his mind. Lyra flinched. Another lie. She knew it somehow. Not through evidence. Through memory. The truth clawed at the edge of her mind, like something desperate to escape. Aeron looked toward Lyra suddenly. Not at the servant girl. At the soul beneath her skin. Recognition filled his monstrous eyes with unbearable grief. You remember her. The words shook through her chest. Who was she? Lyra whispered. The entire hall listened. Aeron's expression twisted painfully. Your mother. The world seemed to stop. Lyra stared at him in horror. No. But even as she denied it, the visions intensified. A woman kneeling before a cradle. Silver hair glowing beneath moonlight. A lullaby sung beside winter fire. Aeron smiling, not monstrous then. Not cursed. Just a king deeply in love. The queen touched the infant's forehead gently. Lyriana. The name shattered through Lyra's mind like lightning. Not Lyra. Lyriana Everdane. Daughter of the Shadow King. Hidden heir to the fallen bloodline. Her knees nearly gave out. The floating crown pulsed violently above her. Selene whispered in horror. The lost child. Varric's face darkened immediately. So he had known. Maybe not her identity specifically, but enough. Enough to fear the possibility of surviving blood. Lyra's breathing turned ragged. All her life, she had believed herself a nameless servant spared accidentally from a dead house. But she had never been spared. She had been hidden. Aeron took one slow step toward her despite the silver arrows buried in his flesh. Your mother died protecting you. The grief in his voice nearly broke her. Varric burned Everdane to seize the throne. When your mother refused to kneel, his jaw tightened violently. He murdered her before the court. The nobles recoiled. Several looked toward Varric in growing horror now. Too many pieces suddenly fit together. The rewritten histories. The sealed records. The disappearance of entire bloodlines loyal to Aeron. Varric sneered coldly. And what would you have done differently? You drowned the kingdom in shadow magic chasing a dead woman. Aeron's roar shook the hall. Darkness exploded outward violently. The former king lunged. The black-armored soldiers fired silver bolts instantly. Chaos erupted again. Lyra screamed as Aeron slammed through the throne steps in a storm of claws and smoke. Guards died instantly beneath monstrous strength. Marble shattered. Blood sprayed across royal banners, while nobles fled through smoke and screaming bodies. Varric retreated toward the throne, calm despite the carnage, because this was still going according to plan. Lyra saw it suddenly. He wanted Aeron unleashed publicly, wanted the nobles terrified, wanted Caelric forced into an impossible choice. Kill his own father, or lose the throne forever. The prince understood it too. Caelric staggered toward the battle despite his wound. Stop! Neither man listened. Aeron tore through another line of soldiers. while Varric's elite guard drove silver blades deeper into his cursed flesh. The former king's body flickered rapidly between man and beast now, unstable beneath years of torture and magic. He was losing control, and if he fully transformed, the palace would not survive. Lyra felt it instinctively. The thing inside Aaron's curse was waking. Something older than wolves. Something born from grief and betrayal and 20 years of endless darkness. Then Selena moved. Fast. Too fast for anyone to stop her. The noblewoman snatched a fallen silver spear from the floor and drove it directly toward Lyra's heart. "Better dead than crowned," she screamed. Caelric reached her first. The spear pierced him instead. The sound Lyra made did not feel human. The prince staggered violently as silver punched through his shoulder and into his chest. Blood splattered across Lyra's hands. Selene froze in horror at what she had done. And suddenly, the Maid bond completed. Silver fire exploded through the throne hall. The fire did not burn like ordinary magic. It devoured. Silver light exploded outward from Lyra and Caelric with enough force to shatter every remaining window in the coronation hall. The blast threw guards backward across the marble floor. Noble banners ignited instantly. Chandeliers crashed from the ceiling in storms of broken crystal and flame. And in the center of the destruction, the Maid bond awakened fully. Lyra felt it tear through her body like lightning. Every heartbeat inside Caelric's chest slammed against her own. His pain flooded her senses. The silver poisoning his blood, the agony spreading through his wolf, the years of loneliness hidden beneath cold control. She felt all of it in one unbearable instant. And he felt her too. The fear, the grief, the endless ache of surviving a childhood she could barely remember. Caelric collapsed to one knee before her, blood pouring through his fingers where the silver spear remained buried near his heart. His silver eyes locked onto hers in visible shock. The bond was real. Irrevocable. The entire hall saw it. Selene stumbled backward, horror draining the color from her face. No. The floating crown ignited brighter above Lyra's head. The ancient runes beneath the floor erupted fully alive. Then every wolf in the hall dropped to their knees. Not by choice. Instinct. Even the strongest nobles gasped as invisible force crushed through the chamber like the weight of an ancient alpha command. Guards trembled violently. Priestesses bowed their heads to the floor. Only 3 remained standing. Lyra, Caelric, and Aaron. The former king turned toward them slowly through drifting smoke and blood. His monstrous form flickered violently now between shadow beast and wounded man, silver arrows still embedded deep in his flesh. But when he saw the completed bond, something inside him broke. Not rage, relief. 20 years of suffering flashed across his ruined face all at once. "She lives," Aaron whispered. Varric snarled from beside the throne. "Kill them." But even his own soldiers hesitated now, because the room could feel it. The old bloodline had returned. Lyra barely noticed the kneeling court around her. Her entire focus locked onto Caelric. The prince's breathing was growing weaker. Silver poison spread visibly beneath his skin in dark branching veins. Wolves healed quickly from ordinary wounds, but silver embedded near the heart could kill even royal blood. "Don't," Caelric rasped suddenly. Lyra froze. His gaze dropped briefly toward the glowing runes burning beneath her skin. "You're thinking about using the magic." Because of course, he could feel her through the bond now. Lyra's hands trembled around the spear lodged in his chest. "You're dying, and you don't know what that power costs." Neither did he. That terrified her most. The magic awakening inside her felt ancient and hungry, pressing against her ribs like something alive beneath her skin. It wanted release. It wanted blood. Another violent tremor shook the palace. The crack beneath the hall widened again with a roar of breaking stone. Frost spread across the marble floor in twisting patterns, while distant howls echoed from the depths below. Varric backed toward the throne, his composure finally beginning to fracture. "Seal the lower chambers," he barked toward his guards. "If the crypt opens, too late." The palace floor exploded. Stone erupted upward, and a storm of dust and shattered marble as ancient doors buried beneath the throne hall burst apart. Freezing darkness poured into the chamber along with silver mist, older than the kingdom itself. And from that darkness, wolves emerged. Ghost wolves. Massive spectral creatures woven from moonlight and shadow climbed from the crypt beneath the palace one by one. Their eyes glowed silver blue in the ruined hall, while frost spread beneath their paws. The court stared in frozen terror. Ancient royal guardians, dead for centuries. And every single one of them ignored the throne, ignored Varric, ignored the nobles. They walked directly toward Lyra, then bowed. The hall descended into complete silence. Selene whispered shakily, "Moon goddess, protect us." Lyra stared at the wolves in disbelief. She could feel them, not physically, emotionally. Loyalty, grief, recognition. They remembered her, or rather, the soul within her blood. The oldest spirit wolf stepped forward slowly, larger than the others, its spectral fur glowing silver in the darkness. A crown symbol burned across its forehead. A royal guardian. It lowered its head before Lyra, and suddenly the memories returned completely. Not fragments anymore. Truth. The throne room years ago. Varric poisoning the royal council against Aeron. Nobles turning against the Shadow King, out of fear of his growing magic. The queen discovering the betrayal too late. Silver chains. Assassin. Blood across black marble floors. And Aeron, transforming into the beast willingly to protect their daughter while the palace burned. The curse had not destroyed him. He chose it. To survive long enough to protect Liriana. Tears blurred Lyra's vision. Varric saw understanding dawn across her face, and immediately realized the truth. "She remembers," he whispered. Fear twisted his expression instantly into fury. The regent ripped a black blade from his side and raised it toward the throne. Ancient runes ignited across the weapon. Aeron's face changed instantly. Real fear. Lyra. Too late. Varric drove the blade into the throne itself. The kingdom screamed. There was no other way to describe the sound. The entire palace shook violently as black cracks exploded across the throne and spread outward through the hall like poison. The ancient wolf crest carved into the stone began bleeding shadow. Forbidden magic. Not Everdane's. Varric's. The nobles stared in horror as darkness poured upward from the throne itself. "I kept this kingdom alive," Varric roared, "while weak kings worshipped dead gods and dying bloodlines." The shadow spread across his body instantly, swallowing his veins in black fire. Lyra realized the terrible truth. Varric had been using forbidden magic for years, not to protect Valdron, to control it. His soldiers backed away in terror as the regent's body twisted beneath unnatural power. His eyes turned completely black. Shadows erupted from the floor around him like living serpents. Selene screamed as one wrapped around her throat. Varric barely looked at her. "You wanted a crown?" he hissed coldly. "Then die with the throne." He threw her aside violently. Caelric forced himself upright despite the silver spear still lodged in his chest. "You corrupted the kingdom. I saved it from monsters." Aeron stepped forward through drifting smoke and ghost wolves. "No," the former king growled. "You became one." Varric unleashed the darkness. Shadow erupted across the hall in a tidal wave. The ghost wolves howled. The beast roared. The palace began collapsing around them. And standing at the center of it all, Lyra finally stopped being afraid. The darkness hit the throne hall like a living storm. Shadow tore through pillars and shattered stained glass windows into glittering rain. Nobles screamed as black tendrils coiled across the marble floor, swallowing torchlight and moonlight alike. The ancient palace groaned around them, stone cracking beneath the force of forbidden magic, unleashed after decades of secrecy. But Lyra did not move. For the first time in her life, she stood perfectly still inside chaos. The fear that had ruled her for years. The fear of speaking too loudly, of being seen, of drawing anger, of surviving another punishment, burned away beneath the silver fire glowing inside her blood. Not because she had become cruel, not because she no longer felt pain, but because she finally understood what had been stolen from her. Her family, her name, her kingdom. Varric's darkness rushed toward her like grasping hands. The ghost wolves lunged instantly. Silver spirits collided against black shadow in a violent explosion that shook the hall. Ancient magic screamed through the air, while frost and darkness tore across shattered marble. Several spectral wolves vanished beneath Varric's corruption, dissolving into silver ash. Still, they fought to protect her, not the crown. Here, Caelric staggered toward Lyra, despite the spear lodged near his heart. Blood soaked his black coronation mantle, but the mate bond dragged him forward through agony stronger than silver poison. Lyra, he rasped. She turned. The moment their eyes met, the world seemed to narrow around them. The collapsing palace, the screaming court, the war between dead magic and living shadow. None of it mattered for one impossible heartbeat. Caelric reached for her face carefully, as though afraid she would disappear if he touched her too quickly. His hand trembled slightly against her scarred skin, not from disgust. Never that. From fear. Fear of losing her. "You have to leave," he said hoarsely. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "What?" "The throne hall is falling apart." Another violent tremor shook the palace hard enough to crack the ceiling above them. Stone crashed down nearby in clouds of dust and sparks. Caelric barely reacted. His silver eyes remained fixed entirely on her. If the darkness reaches the crypt below the castle, his jaw tightened painfully. Everyone in Valdron dies. Lyra understood instantly. The ancient wolves beneath the palace were not merely spirits. They were seals, guardians imprisoning something far older than the throne itself. And Varric was breaking those seals apart. Aaron roared across the hall as he tore through black shadow with monstrous claws. But even the former king was weakening now. Years of chains, silver poison, and cursed magic had left his body unstable. Every transformation between man and beast ripped pieces from him. Varric laughed from the throne, shadow pouring endlessly from his corrupted body. "You still don't understand," he shouted over the chaos. "The kingdom was dying long before I touched forbidden magic." Black tendrils lashed outward violently, impaling one of the ghost wolves through the chest. The spirit dissolved into silver mist with a mournful howl. The northern packs rebelled. Varric snarled. The harvests failed. The royal bloodline weakened with every generation. He pointed toward Aaron with visible hatred, and he chose love over survival. Aaron lunged through the smoke. Varric blasted him backward with shadow so powerful it shattered the throne behind him. The former king crashed across the marble floor in human form now, barely able to rise. Lyra ran toward him instinctively. "Wait." Caelric tried to stop her, but nearly collapsed from blood loss. Aaron looked up as Lyra reached him. For the first time since she had met him, the monster was gone. Only her father remained. His silver eyes softened painfully as he saw her kneeling beside him. "You look like her," he whispered. Lyra's throat tightened. All her life, she had belonged nowhere. No family, no name, no one who looked at her like she mattered. And now she had found her father only to watch him dying beneath a collapsing kingdom. Tears burned her eyes. "Why didn't you come for me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Not accusation. Fine." Aaron closed his eyes briefly. "I tried." The words shattered her. "They took you before the palace burned." He whispered weakly. "I searched for years after the curse changed me, but the council hid you among servants. Every time I came close." His voice roughened with grief. Varric used the chains. Lyra remembered the screams beneath the palace now. Not rage. Awakens. 20 years of it. The beast had never stopped fighting to return to her. Another violent crash shook the hall. Caelric stepped protectively beside Lyra, despite blood still pouring down his side. His wolf eyes glowed faint silver now, the bond pushing strength into him through sheer instinct. Varric noticed immediately, and smiled. "Look at you," the regent mocked softly. the future king kneeling beside monsters. Calric rose slowly to his full height. The room changed when he did, not because of magic, because of authority. The true weight of an alpha king finally settled across the ruined throne hall. Even wounded, even bleeding, even moments from death, he radiated command. "You murdered your brother," Calric said quietly. Varric shrugged. "I saved the crown from weakness. You murdered my mother." She was turning him against the council. "You burned a child's bloodline alive." Varric's eyes darkened. "And I would do it again." Silence crashed through the chamber. Not even the shadows moved. Calric looked at Lyra then. Not the lost princess. Not forbidden blood. Here, the scarred servant girl who fed a chained monster because she could not bear cruelty. The girl who still cried for strangers despite everything done to her. Something fierce and unbearable crossed his face. Devotion. Not political. Not strategic. Personal. Absolute. The prince turned back toward the throne, then slowly drew the silver spear from his own chest. Lidargaspeth. Blood spilled across the floor instantly. But Calric did not fall. He snapped the spear in half. The entire court stared. Because wolves healed from wounds. Kings endured them. The mate bond burned silver beneath his skin now, stabilizing his wolf through pain that should have crippled him. Calric lifted his gaze toward the terrified nobles hiding around the ruined hall. "Witness carefully," he said. His voice rolled through the chamber with terrifying calm. "Tonight, you will decide whether Valdron belongs to fear." Silver light ignited in his eyes. Or to truth. Varric attacked instantly. Darkness exploded across the hall in a massive wave, aimed directly at Calric. But Lyra moved first. The power inside her finally awakened completely. Moonfire erupted from her scars. Silver flames burst outward in a violent storm, colliding against Varric's darkness hard enough to shake the entire palace. The force shattered remaining pillars and blasted shadow backward from the throne. The court stared in horror and awe. Lyra stood surrounded by silver fire, not consumed by it, crowned by it. The floating crown descended slowly onto her head. Ancient runes ignited across the hall. Every ghost wolf howled at once, and the kingdom bowed. The moment the crown touched Lyra's head, the palace remembered its true queen. Silver fire raced through the ruined throne hall in blinding waves, flooding ancient runes hidden beneath centuries of stone and blood. The cracked marble floor ignited with moon symbols older than Valdron itself. Every royal banner snapped violently overhead, as though caught in a storm no mortal wind could create. And across the kingdom, the wolves knelt. In distant guard towers, hardened soldiers dropped to one knee without understanding why. In crowded taverns beneath the castle, wolves froze mid-breath, as ancient instinct pressed against their bones. Beyond the city walls, packs scattered across snowy forests lifted their heads toward the palace, while silver light spread across the clouds above Valdron like a second moon awakening. The bloodline had returned. Not hidden, not broken, crowned. Inside the throne hall, even the remaining nobles bowed instinctively beneath the weight of ancient alpha power, pouring from Lyra's awakened magic. Some fought it. Most failed. Varric screamed in fury. The darkness around him exploded outward violently, shadow twisting across his body until he barely resembled a man anymore. Black veins consumed his skin. His spine cracked grotesquely, as forbidden magic reshaped flesh into something monstrous and unstable. "You think a crown makes you rulers?" he roared. The hall trembled beneath his rage. "I built this kingdom." "No," Lyra said softly. Her voice carried effortlessly through the chaos. "You chained it." Varric lunged. The darkness hit her, like a tidal wave. But this time Lyra did not retreat. Silver moonfire erupted from her body in a storm of ancient magic, colliding against Varric's corruption with enough force to split the throne hall apart. Shadows screamed against silver light. The ceiling above shattered completely, exposing the storm-black sky overhead. Rain poured into the palace. Moonlight followed, and the moment that light touched Lyra, the spirit wolves rose around her. Dozens, hundreds, Ancient royal guardians formed a glowing circle around the crowned queen while silver fire danced through their spectral fur. The court watched in stunned silence as the wolves turned toward Varric with identical glowing eyes. Judgment. The regent staggered backward for the first time. Fear finally reached him. "You don't understand what lives beneath this kingdom," he snarled desperately. "Without the shadows controlling the crypt, Valdron dies." Aeron forced himself upright beside the shattered throne, blood covering his chest. "That was always your lie." Varric's gaze snapped toward him murderously. "The crypt was never a prison," Aeron growled. "It was protection." The former king looked toward Lyra, toward his daughter. The ancient wolves beneath Valdron guarded the balance between shadow and moonfire. But Varric corrupted the seals to feed his own power. Understanding spread through the hall instantly. The failing harvests, the dying wolves, the weakening bloodlines. Not natural decay. Poison. Varric had slowly been draining the kingdom itself for years. Selene stared at the regent in horror. "You doomed us. I saved you," Varric thundered. His shadow exploded again, larger now, devouring half the throne chamber. The darkness swallowed nobles screaming into black mist. Guards vanished. Stone dissolved. Even spirit wolves flickered beneath the corruption. Lyra felt the balance breaking. Varric's magic fed on fear and death. The more destruction around him, the stronger he became. And if he fully reached the crypt beneath the palace, the ancient seals would collapse forever. Caelric understood it too. The prince stepped beside Lyra slowly, blood still soaking his ruined coronation robes. His silver eyes burned brighter now, the mate bond stabilizing his wolf with every breath they shared. He looked at her not with doubt, not with fear, with certainty. "What do you need?" he asked. The question nearly shattered her heart, because no one had ever asked what she needed before. Not the servants, not the court, not the world that taught her survival mattered more than wanting anything at all. Lyra looked toward the collapsing hall, toward her father bleeding beside shattered stone, toward terrified nobles watching their kingdom die around them. Then toward Varric, the man who murdered her mother, burned her bloodline, turned her father into a monster. And still, she did not want revenge alone. She wanted it to end. "The seals," she whispered. "They need both bloodlines." Caelric's expression sharpened instantly. Shadow and Moonfire, Thorn and Everdane. The kingdom had never survived through one line ruling alone. Balance. Varric realized it too late. "No." Caelric grabbed Lyra's hand. The mate bond ignited fully. Silver fire and shadow collided between them, not violently this time, but perfectly balanced. Moonlight exploded upward through the ruined throne hall like a divine storm, while ancient runes awakened across the entire palace. The spirit wolves howled. Aeron smiled weakly through blood. And, beneath the castle, the crypt opened, not in darkness, in light. Ancient silver trees emerged below the throne hall, roots glowing beneath the stone foundations of Valdron. The hidden heart of the kingdom revealed itself at last, a sacred forest buried beneath the palace since the first wolves walked the earth. The nobles stared in speechless awe. Varric screamed. The shadow consuming his body began burning away beneath the moonfire flooding the hall. Black magic cracked apart across his flesh. "You weak fools," he roared desperately. "Mercy destroys kingdoms." Caelric stepped forward beside Lyra. "No," the prince said coldly, "but fear does." Together, they unleashed the bond. Silver light consumed the throne hall completely. Varric's shadows shattered. The regent screamed one final time as moonfire tore the corruption from his body, stripping away decades of stolen magic. Black smoke exploded upward through the broken ceiling and vanished into the storm above. Then silence fell. The darkness was gone. Rain drifted softly through the ruined palace. The spirit wolves slowly lifted their heads toward Lyra one last time before dissolving into silver mist beneath the moonlight. The kingdom breathed again. Lyra swayed violently as exhaustion crashed through her body all at once. The crown slipped slightly against her hair. Kelric caught her instantly. Strong arms wrapped around her before she could fall. For one quiet moment, the ruined throne hall disappeared around them. There was only warmth, only the steady sound of his heartbeat against her ear. "You stayed," she whispered weakly. Kelric rested his forehead gently against hers. There was never another choice. The words broke something inside her completely. Not painfully, softly, like ice finally thawing after endless winter. Around them, the surviving nobles slowly lowered themselves to one knee. Not forced, willing. Selene stood among them silently, pale and shaken. For a long moment, Lyra thought the noblewoman might refuse. Then even Selene bowed her head, not to the servant, to the queen. Aeron watched the scene quietly from beside the shattered throne. The curse was still consuming him. Lyra saw it immediately. The shadows beneath his skin had not vanished completely. Her chest tightened painfully. "Father," Aeron smiled faintly. The expression transformed him suddenly into the man from her visions, rather than the monster beneath the palace. "You brought the dawn back to Valdron," he whispered. Then his silver eyes shifted toward Kelric. "Protect her better than I protected her mother." Kelric bowed his head once, not as prince to king, as son to father. The former king looked toward the broken ceiling above them where moonlight spilled softly through falling rain. At peace, finally. Then his body dissolved into silver ash beneath the wind. Lyra cried silently as the ashes scattered across the ruined throne hall like snow. But the grief no longer felt empty, because she was not alone anymore. Kelric held her through every trembling breath, and for the first time in her life, the kingdom did not look at her with fear. Weeks later, when the wolves of Valdron gathered beneath the repaired palace banners, they did not crown Kelric alone. They crowned them together. The scarred maid, once hidden beneath servant shadows, walked through the royal court, wearing silver and black beneath moonlit skies, while wolves bowed as she passed. Not because she had become feared, but because she had endured. And when the new king took her hand before the entire kingdom, there was no hesitation left in him. No denial, no fear of the bond. Kelric Thorn knelt before his queen beneath the ancient moon banners of Valdron and pressed his forehead against her scarred hand. "My heart knew you long before my crown did," he said quietly. The court fell silent. Then the wolves began to howl. And this time, the sound no longer mourned the dead. It welcomed the future.